am so excited. So Idaho Pasture Pigs are new for us, and but I went down the Google rabbit hole, and I am in love and obsessed. And then when I heard about you, and then I like see you in on the Facebook group, and you're so knowledgeable, and you've written a book, and I'm just like, this is so neat. I feel like everybody in the world needs to know about Idaho Pasture Pigs because they are the cutest, friendliest. They have amazing meat, like all the things. But I would love to hear your journey because you guys were like the brains behind the genius.
Well, we didn't develop the breed.
Okay.
We just I'm gonna say we just saved them from extinction. Not really. So I mean, when Shelly and Gary decided they weren't doing pigs anymore, we thought exactly like you just said, these pigs are phenomenal. Like I can't imagine other people not enjoying these pigs like that we do. So yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, I was hoping Shelly would just do the registry, but here we are.
Oh,
Years later.
so you started the registry process for the Idaho Pasture.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, how awesome. Because now it's an actual, I mean, there's like breed standard. Has how many years been? 10? No, more, less?
The registry's been around for 10. The pigs have been around longer, obviously.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So then before, I'm so curious because now I have questions. Before, I know I'm like looking, I have my list here in front of me so I don't get off track, but then now my brain's like, oh my goodness. So in talking
Look,
about
mine's here too.
I know that's awesome. So feel free to like interject and add as we go. Because now I'm so curious more about the history, what you know about the history, since you said you were kind of saving them from extinction. And it sounds like somebody was involved with the breed or, the breed before you guys got involved. And I'm curious what you have to share about that.
Go ahead.
So Shelly and Gary developed them back in 2007. They started.
Okay.
But 2012 is when we got our first pigs. And same thing as you, we fell in love, right? Like great pigs. And then you eat one and you're like, oh my God, this is the best pork ever.
Yeah.
And so we went down that rabbit hole and just started buying and ended up acquiring the foundation herd and
Wow.
just continuing the lines from there.
And you bought the foundation herd from Shelly. Is that the name?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And what are the
Yeah,
lines? I'm still learning the lines on Facebook. I see people mention their pigs based on lines. Was there lines that were kind of and I think you actually shared the other day on Facebook, was that like 10 different pigs that were kind of the foundation or something like?
There's 12 boar lines and 25 sow lines.
Okay.
Yeah. And the story, we do have the story on the website and on the Facebook page, but the gist of it is that, Shelly, again, we bought the entire herd. So some of them, we just kept the names that she had. Some of them, she just said, here's the pigs. And, like, for example, I'll use Love Pig, right? My son, we said, what should we name it? And my son said, Dad loves pigs. We're going to call it Love Pig.
Oh, that's cute.
So that, some of the names came directly from Shelly and Gary. And then some of them, like I said, she just said, this is a new line, and we put a name with it.
That's awesome. And your farm name is?
White Bison Farm.
Okay. I mean, I know. I just was like wanting to put it on the recording.
And we're in northeastern Wisconsin.
Okay, so yeah, you guys I'm in Washington, so that's kind of far. But do you guys sell pigs across the country? Do you ship them, or how do people who live far away from you get access to your pigs?
So we do ship them when we can. We do always recommend people to come see the farm, visit as many farms as you can, see what people are doing, helps the learning curve.
Yeah.
As far as making those mistakes that other people have already made, why make them yourselves? So yeah, just we really like for people to come see what we're doing and see how it can be done. And maybe they give us ideas too. And why do you do it this way? So then we change things too.
Yeah, I love that, especially with there's so many different ways of having the huts and the fencing and the water barrels and then also environment where you live. I mean, you live not, I mean, you have different challenges that we have. So like, I think
Yes.
you guys have ticks, right? We don't really, I mean, Eastern Washington, I think has ticks. We're in Western Washington. So we don't have like a large tick problem, but I know some people struggle with that this time of year. And
We have a large tick problem. I
yeah,
mean, not with the pigs though.
And
no.
not some years they aren't as bad, but this year is atrocious. I
Wow.
don't normally walk through the woods and get ticks, and this year I'll walk through the woods and come out with 3.
Really?
So yeah, there's a lot of ticks this year.
And they
Yeah, I had
don't
4
bother the
yesterday.
pigs? Really?
Not as a whole. I mean, I know they get other people seem to have a problem. We normally have a lot of chickens that roam around. And
Mhm.
I truly think because our meat chickens would do one end of the pastures, our laying hens would do the other ends. I do think the chickens help a lot for right around the farm itself.
Yeah. Do you
Mhm.
run chickens in with your pigs or do you allow them to mingle?
They do whatever they want.
They're
They're
free
chickens.
range,
Yeah, yeah,
truly free range.
yeah. Our
Yeah.
chickens end up in the cow field all the time. And I'm like, hey, it
Yeah.
just helps with reduce fly population. It's like great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So do you mind touching on the development of the breed, how it came about? I know that it started based on the 3 different pigs. Do you mind sharing?
Well, that's the thing. We can't.
Oh, you
And
can't?
not because we can't, but we didn't develop the breed. So
Got it.
Shelley and Gary Ferris did. So exactly what went into everything that, I mean, it was years of
Wow.
dedication and a lot of work to get the breed to where it is. And that is proprietary to them.
Okay.
So as much as I'd like to answer all of that question for everyone, a lot of the time people have that question. We just don't have that information. Like I said, when we got the line, she said, these are the lines. This is a 1 line. This is a 2nd line. This is a 3rd line. This is a new line. And that's where we started from.
I think because and this might be misinformation, which is good to know too. Online, I see that the combination of Duroc, Berkshire, and Cooney Cooney was used to
Yep.
create Idaho Pasture Pigs. So
That is
I'm
completely true. Yep.
sure. Okay. So that's, I guess, all right. And then I'm curious what your preferred method of fencing and housing is for your pigs or your setup. I know that there's several different ways, but do you have a preferred method?
So our big pens, our breeding pens, meat pens, that is all in high tensile fence. So our whole farm is high tensile fence.
Okay.
So we just continued that on for the pigs. And then for the maternity ward, so where they're going to farrow,
Mhm.
we have them in the Premier One fencing, the mesh netting
Mhm.
fence, which does really well, movable. We can create pens as we need. Keeps piglets in.
I love hearing that because that's what we use. And I get some people that I've talked to, they're like, oh my gosh, I hate the netting, or I can't get it to stay in the ground, or just that it poses challenges. And we love the netting. I feel like it is so easy for me to move on my own. If I need to go out there by myself, it's not a 2-person thing. Oh, I mean, sometimes it can be a 2-person thing, but I do feel like I can move things when I see things that need to be moved around. And in Washington, so we started with a huge solar battery, like the biggest one, Premier Cells. That was our biggest challenge, was because Washington does not get a lot of sun. And so our solar battery, even with the largest one, was not working. And so then we ended up having to run the wire from the cow field built like a little archway to run it to the pigs, which works, but I don't know. We love the netting. We have the regular netting and then we have the piglet netting and it seems to work really well. But you use the high tinsel. Do you feel like the boars respect that more? Or
I think they just respect electricity.
yeah.
So whether it's high tensile or whether it's the netting fence, we've kept our full grown boars in either the netting fence or like it's most of the time they're out in their bigger pastures. And honestly, they really don't test it.
Mhm.
If the electricity went out for a few days, they're smart and they would
Right.
figure it out.
Yeah.
But as a whole, they just don't test it. They don't cause a ruckus. The only time we tend to have a problem is in the dead of winter. If we get, feet upon feet of snow,
Mm.
it's always the boars. I will not lie to you. The girls just stay put. They could care
Yeah.
less if the fences were not working, but the boars will tend to come and visit.
Yeah.
So our one boar just passed away, but he spent years.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
well, eventually that happens, but
Yes.
I
Part of
mean,
farming.
honestly, it was a trial until I realized that I was being the idiot and that he obviously, when he didn't ground anymore, we just had too much snow to ground. And
Right.
so he would realize he could walk through the fence and he would come and greet me. And it was, I mean, I want to say I spent 2 winters fighting with him until finally I'm like, this is silly. Like, you're the idiot. Get smarter. So then we actually put up a different fence for the boar, well, some of the boars, but him in particular. And as soon as the first day he came to greet me, then I would know it was time to lock all the boars in for the winter. And so we just had different fencing that for the winter, I just put them into smaller, and they don't, I mean, again, you're talking 4 or 5 feet of snow. They weren't going very far anyway.
Right. That's a lot
They
of
didn't
stuff.
care if they were in smaller sacrificial pens for the winter.
And that would just be like woven wire fence,
Yep.
Yeah.
something solid.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of
But on
snow.
the netting,
Hmm?
on
Yeah.
the netting fence, I mean, we've had boars next to sows inside that netting fence, and they've never crossed it to get to the
Yeah.
sow.
That's the same with us. We haven't had, the only time we had an issue with our last boar was when it was really, really rainy and he was in a low spot and he learned to push at the fence post where it was muddy to lift it out. And then once it laid flat on the ground, he just walked right over it because it was grounded out. And so
Mhm.
we just kept having to move him because of the rain. It just was such a pit in parts of our field. And yeah, it was just getting him to the right spot where the ground wouldn't cave for him because he just was so smart and knew to push on the dirt next to the post to push the post. He just was smart. They're just smart,
That's the
right?
thing is
If they want
they
out,
are really
figure it
smart.
out.
They are. And it's almost like they're looking, right? Like you watch
Yes,
them and they're like, I'm going to do this. And out they
right.
go.
Yeah, they are so funny.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, our girl, she just loves, and she's so good with the kids, right? We have a seven, or no, she's 8 now, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, and 14-year-old. And she just loves scratches. And I mean, obviously pigs are pigs. You can't turn your back to a pig. And that's what we
yeah.
say, right? You're always cautious, but they're
Yes,
so darn friendly and they just love. They love
they
love.
do. Yep.
Um,
But that's the thing with the Premier. I'm just gonna say that about the Premier
yeah,
One fencing is so like our maternity wards, the way we have them set up, it's so easy to go out there, feed breakfast, and then I'll walk through and I'll be like, oh, the grass is getting a little high right here. And you just pick up the fence and move it out 2 feet and
yep,
someone else eats it and then you go back and fix it.
yep,
I
exactly.
love it.
Because
No mowing. You just let the pigs work.
yes,
Hmm.
exactly. And even if it's just a couple feet, like you said, every
Yep.
day or every other day, they're constantly getting just enough fresh grass to keep them happy. And it's keeping the fence short around the fence line too. Like we don't really have issues with the grass shorting out the netting, which is what we were worried about. We just kind of push it down in that one spot and then we put the fence there and then they eat up to the fence and then we just keep doing that and They just love their little buttercups popping up in the field. Do you have a preferred sow to boar ratio? Like what is your sweet spot for how many boars and sows?
We were discussing this. Apparently our numbers are different. I like 3 sows with a boar. In the pastures we have. Now, when we lived in Pennsylvania, we had a different growing season. And then we traditionally ran 4 girls with a boar. Again, we were just starting out, though. We didn't have as many lines. We didn't, have quite the number of pigs we eventually got. So I like 3. 3 to me is a good number, but
I think 4 is a better number.
Oh, that's
When you're thinking about having a boar, right? A boar is only good for one thing, right?
yes, yes,
So the more he can breed,
yeah,
the less boars you have to have.
yeah. Do you find that there's not like the difference between 3 and 4? So I guess in chicken terms, right? How many hens per rooster? Do you feel like if there's too many sows, he doesn't have an interest in one, or that there's like a
No, I mean, we've had a boar that has had bred every girl, and they had their litters within like 3 days of each other.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because
They like
the
synced up
sows are gonna, the sows are gonna sync up, and
like cows. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then let me see. I'm just looking at my next question. How many feeders? Well, I have 2. I have like, how much land do you have your pigs on, or how much land per pig? I guess we could start there.
So our bigger pastures are about 3/4 of an acre here. And we did that, so that we basically have one runway, and then down both sides of the runway, we've got bigger pens. And then up near the barn we've got 2 of those have been broken down into the maternity ward for the, when we're having babies. But again, we could just take that Premier One netting fence down, and it's still a big pasture, and we can use it as that if we need to. But yeah, the 3/4 of an acre, I mean, for the most, okay, so I'm just going to jump while we're talking about this to a different question you have, which was rotational. We don't actually rotate because we have our boars have a pasture. And then the girls come and go out of the pasture, whether they're coming out and going into a maternity ward, whether like in the fall, they get a break. So they don't go back in with the boar, they go into girl pens. And I usually will borrow a horse pasture or a bison pasture and put them into a bigger, area. So they're not with the boars. So we don't necessarily rotate as much as pigs rotate in and out. So the pasture gets a break when it just has a boar in it.
Right.
But we don't necessarily take everyone out and rotate through.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And on that same note, if the pasture is growing faster than the pigs are able to consume it, we might move those pigs out and move a feeder group into that pen to eat it down, and then rotate them a little bit more.
Oh, that is a really good point. How many feeders? I'm sorry, keep going.
So we try and keep like 6 to not more than 10 in a pasture, in a pasture. But how many? Yeah, but again, they're small, right? They start out from 3 months, and then they grow up till we're butchering them. So depending on how many and how fast they're eating it, sometimes we'll break them apart and just have 5 in a pen. It depends, again, how fast the grass is growing, what time of year it is, all of that factors into how we're, laying it out. But how many feeders we have at any given time, I mean, it kind of varies, because we try and keep the feeder girls, so the girls that don't make breed quality, most of them stay here with us. Now, we do have a couple people that we now trust, and we still make them sign contracts. But after years of doing this, we've been, fortunate enough to get a couple groups of people that we trust to take feeder girls. We know they're going to butcher them. We know they're not going to breed them, because that's the big concern. If they're a feeder for a reason.
Right.
So a barrow, right? You just castrate him. You can send him out. If someone fell in love with him and kept him as a pet forever, I don't care. right? It
Right.
doesn't matter. He
Can't
can't
breed
breed
any.
anyone's.
Right.
Yeah. But the feeder girls, you run the risk of sending them out and then someone's like, but I really love her.
Right.
And she's a feeder for a reason.
Right.
So, but how many feeders we have, I mean, it kind of depends, right? So right now we have we have 3 litters out there right now that we have 1 girl per litter. So,
Oh,
I mean, how many litters I mean, how many
wow. That's a
girls?
lot of
And then,
castrating.
yeah, it is a lot of castrating.
And we very rarely, well, almost never keep a barrel.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
no.
You know, those are all sold for
Okay.
feeders.
Unless we have one that's not quite growing as fast as we want him to, in which case we'll keep him. But I
Mhm.
mean, that's not very often do we have a barrel that makes it through to butchering with us.
Do you guys usually grow them out? I would assume you have a customer base. Do you
We
feel like
do.
your customer base is more buying piglets or more buying but like of age pigs for butcher or both?
So we sell a lot of piglets, you know, for breed stock and for feeders, but we don't sell them at butcher weight. We actually take them to butcher and then sell the finished meat.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah, so that customer base grows every year.
I would assume so. I mean,
Mhm.
does that mean you have to go through a USDA butcher facility?
We
We
do,
do.
yes.
Yep.
Okay. Because that we butcher ourselves. We've never gone through a USDA butcher. So we just sell either piglets or we sell whole live 10-month-old pigs.
Mhm.
Do you find any challenges or pros, or just how has your experience been with that?
So I think the pro is when you get your packaging back, you know, you have your own label on it. It's vacuum sealed. It's a very professional package.
Looks really nice.
Um, so people like that, like kind of gives you some validity.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's a stamp saying that that animal was healthy and everything when it was butchered.
Yeah. Oh, right, because it goes to the inspection versus
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just
And
a
then it'll,
butcher, a regular butcher. They don't have that extra step.
yeah. And it allows us to ship it across state lines and, you know, wherever we need to send it.
Oh, that's amazing. So you guys ship your meat too?
We do.
We do. We don't like to, but we do.
I
For
like the clientele that
special
are here.
people.
Yes.
For special
But
people.
we have quite a few people now that'll stop. Like this morning, we had a gentleman who stops once a week, if not that, twice a week, and just picks up. Today I want a thing of bacon and a thing of pork chops.
Oh, that's so
And then
awesome.
yes, and if it wasn't USDA inspected, we couldn't do that.
Right.
So that's one of the big things. I mean, the con would be we have a phenomenal butcher. But the con is always you have to find the phenomenal butcher because you want your pork back. And that is honestly, that's a serious concern in a lot of places.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was kind of in the back of my head when I asked if you had any challenges without just right out asking that, because it's not like that everywhere or with everyone, but I have, even with cows
Oh no,
or,
we had to
you
find
know,
this guy.
that's amazing. You got lucky.
No, no, no. We got unlucky before we got lucky. So
Oh,
we would take, so I mean, like for example, the first butcher that we went to when we moved here, I would take 2 pigs because 2 pigs is enough to get what you want, but it's also not enough that if something went haywire, you haven't lost 8 pigs, right, to butcher.
got
So
it.
I would take 2 because we were trying to find a butcher. And honestly, the first butcher place I went to, I called Dave when I got there and I was in tears.
Oh
Our pigs
no.
never see, right? They don't have poop. They're outside all the time. And when I had to unload them, they had to walk through slop at least a foot deep to get
Oh
to
my
their pen that
gosh.
they were going to get held in. And so I'm crying and I'm like, I just let my pigs down. I mean, we pamper these things until the day they're butchered, and now I feel like I've dropped them off in the last 10 minutes of their life. I've let them down.
Oh my God.
Well, then I got around to the front to put my order in. And the lady's like, oh no, that's not how we do things. We just take all the pork that comes in today, we put it all in a vat, and you just get your amount back. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. No, that's not going to happen. And we had to change
Wow.
our whole order so that she could run it in batches so that I could get my pork back. Needless to say, I still didn't trust her. So we didn't sell any of it. We kept it all because I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
We're not selling this. How can I
People in the
guarantee
back
it's
are
mine?
probably like, you know, they're not gonna
Yes.
know or something.
But you
Wow.
can know. I mean, it takes 5 seconds to know that it's not your pork.
And our
Right.
butcher now knows, like if he walks in the cooler, he knows what pigs are ours just by the look, the complete difference in look of the carcasses.
That's
He's
amazing.
like, Jodi, your pigs are as red as the steers they're hanging next to. Yes. That's
Yeah.
what I want.
That's what makes this breed so special. It is not
Yep.
washed out, soggy, floppy, gross.
You know,
Yeah.
and then another con to that USDA, you know, is the price. It
Right.
does become very pricey to butcher an animal,
Mhm.
but it's worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, if you have the client base built and you have the people that value it, then it's
Mhm.
not a problem. And I feel as though, I mean, we can afford what we value. And so if
Mhm.
someone really values quality meat, then they're going to find a way to afford it, whether that be cutting back on whatever they need to cut back on. If they value quality, they're going to figure out a way to make it work, in my opinion.
And at the same time, I mean, you have to create a fair price,
Right.
but you have to factor in all those things that are occurring, you know, the feed, the time, the butchering costs.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a trade-off.
I mean,
Yeah.
it comes back to education though.
Right.
Because if you're educating your client base as to why your pork is different, it's easier for them to understand.
Right.
The other thing is, the pork speaks for itself. So this is what I always tell people. I'm like, butcher a pig, take half of it and hand it out to samples for people who want quality pork. Because
Right.
they're going to take that home. They're going to try their bacon or their pork chops or their roast, and they're going to be like, oh, that's phenomenal pork.
Right.
And then you have gained a customer. And maybe it's just a quarter, once a year. Maybe it's a quarter every other year. But you're
Yeah.
still gaining the person who knows that your pork is that good. And they're telling other people.
Yeah.
And another benefit is it's nutrient dense, so it actually fills you up quicker. And
Yeah.
keeps you full longer, so you
Wow.
eat less of it. So there's your savings.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really, really valuable point. When you
You
guys
know,
do
try that with your kids, you know, cook up a pound of your sausage and then cook up a pound of a store-bought sausage and
yeah,
see which one fills them up and which one doesn't.
that's really interesting. Yeah, you make me want to experiment with that. Even though they're gonna say, "What is this garbage you're feeding us?" when I'm comparing it to that.
That's what our kids would be like, Mom, what are you feeding us now?
This isn't the real thing. This isn't real food.
You know,
Oh,
you go for the hotel breakfast and they're like, that sausage was terrible.
oh my gosh, we went somewhere the other day and it was one of our favorite spots years ago, and we just haven't been there in a long time. And we left and we were all like, that was really bad. Why did we used to like that? And I'm like, well, I think it's because we raise our own meat now. I mean,
Yep.
it it ruins it for you when you go out to
Yes.
eat because
Yes,
nothing
it does.
tastes good.
And that happened early on, you know, like I was really like the pork we were raising, right? But you have to convince yourself that you're not just making it up. So we would go out to eat or whatever, and we don't go out to eat very often, but then you would order a pork chop or whatever, and be like, oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And so you reassure yourself that what
Yeah.
you're doing is right.
Yeah. It speaks for itself, most definitely. When you and you guys you grain, right? With the formula,
Yep.
the Idaho Pasture Pig formula, which were you part of the development of creating that formulation?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We are so thankful for that, because then we found, or I didn't find, but two other ladies local to me found a
Mhm.
mill to meet the requirements. And it
Mm.
is so nice just to be able to go out there every morning and night and measure what they need and know that they're being fed well and fed exactly what they need with the double mineral. And
Yep. I mean,
oh,
and it varies again based on location, right? It's not all the same, but
right.
honestly, we have yet to find a place where the formula that we have figured out isn't a good starting base. So
Yeah.
yes, there are places where they have to add a little bit more of something. There's places where they can add a little bit less of something, but as a whole, the formula that we have created is a great starting place for honestly everyone that I have found so far. And it almost works perfectly for honestly just a wide variety and majority of the United States,
Yeah.
thankfully,
So,
because
so we spent many hours talking to nutritionists and feed mills. And I mean, Jodi does that a lot where she's calling feed mills for other people in other states, trying to figure it out for them.
That's amazing.
But it's always challenging because the nutritionists are always trained on confined pigs,
Oh,
you
right.
know, and they need every bit of what they're getting from their diet. And we have to account for grass and, you know, natural stuff that they're getting. So how do you account for that?
Yeah.
And the nutritionist can't figure that out.
they're getting better though.
Yeah.
Honestly, they really are. I've talked to a lot in the last, I'm going to say 6 to 8 months that are so much better to talk to than they were 3, 4 years ago.
Wow.
So across the board, it's becoming more of a accepted practice for people to be raising their pigs on pasture. Because honestly, 3, 4 years ago, you couldn't talk to a nutritionist and you couldn't even convince them that they were going to eat grass, let alone get nutrients from the grasses. I mean,
Oh,
and to tell them that they were going to eat hay, they were like, there's no way. There's no way a pig is eating hay. And I'm like, I swear to you, they've been doing it for years.
right.
They do.
And a great story about that is we had a gentleman from Canada at our farm, and he was looking at the pigs and he's like, these pigs really eat grass. And we're like, yeah. He's like, people don't believe me that this can happen. So we threw a leaf of hay into them and they started eating hay. He said, and he's taking pictures and videos. And he said, if these pigs are eating dry hay, that tells me they will absolutely eat grass. And he's sending it to all his friends that are, you know, doubters. And so it's kind of a fun little thing to see. And, you know, and he's like, I saw it with my own eyes. It happens.
Yeah. Oh, we get people when they come here and they see our pig, they're like, they eat grass, or and they're just shocked. And sure enough, you move their fence, your premier fencing netting in just a couple feet. And the first thing they go for is that fresh. I mean, they love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just put a sow. I'm out of maternity ward room and we don't wean until tomorrow. So I moved a sow is close into one of my horse pasture paddocks today. And I'm giving her scratches and I'm looking out there, and the horse pastures all have dandelions, right? But the pig pastures, they've taken them all out of. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, that is a lot of yellow. I'm like, Autumn, could you do me a huge favor and not take out every dandelion today? But I'm sure she will because she can't help it. So it'll be a good educational picture for tomorrow.
Yeah. They love dandelions too. Definitely.
Yes.
How do you typically, when you just mentioned weaning, that just popped a question in my mind about how do you typically wean your piglets? Like, is there a process, or how do you?
Tomorrow I'm gonna walk out there and I'm gonna open up the fence, and then Dave's gonna be standing where we want them to turn and go in with the boar, and just open the gate when they get there and put them in with the boar. In the spring, we just put them right back in with the boars. And
Okay.
then in the fall, when they come away from their fall litter, that's when they get a break. So they get a couple months where they're not nursing, they're not pregnant. And then instead of putting them in with boars, they go into different larger pastures. Like again, that's when we borrow a horse pasture or a bison pasture, and they're just with a group of girls,
Is that
except one who's kind of a bully.
Is that due to weather also? Like just not wanting to have piglets during a certain time of year and wanting to maximize your time when you have good weather for having piglets?
Yes.
Yes. And we're also looking out for the health of that sow, right?
Right.
We don't want to just drain her and drain her and drain her and make her, you know, we're increasing the longevity. So
Right.
you expect that sow to be productive for about 10 years.
Got it. Okay.
Um, you know, if we were to just continually breed, we would probably get 5.
Wow. Right.
Just because it takes so much out of her.
Yeah.
But when we organize the break, so for example, for us, it's in the fall. Yes, that's specifically because we don't want January piglets.
Got
But
it.
again, if I was in Texas, right, like other people are down in Texas or Florida, I would not have piglets in the dead of summer when it's 90 to 110 degrees.
Right.
So our break would be different based on where we were at. Yep.
And
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
so something Jodi alluded to earlier was the runway, the alleyway that we have between the pens. So that helps with that process. So we have an alleyway that's 16 feet wide between, and then pig pens on both sides of it. So we turn a pig into that alleyway and run them to whatever pasture. Not
And
run them. We walk them to whichever pasture. And typically they do run. They're in a hurry to get there.
For free.
Um,
well, like I said, this morning I moved one down to the horse paddock, and one of the horses' paddocks opens up into that alleyway. So honestly, for many reasons. Number one, it's easy for me to get back and forth. Number two, there are many days when the horses will go into the runway and eat because they might as well eat it down instead of me mowing it. And secondly, it just makes it much easier if I want to move a pet or pigs into a horse pasture. But honestly, I just put a hog panel across where I wanted her to turn. I went up ahead of her, kept feeding. She turned around and went down. And by the time I got there, I just shut the gate behind her. She was where I needed her to be.
and
It
it's
was that simple.
And it's the same way with loading pigs for butcher. We could have them a quarter mile from the trailer, open the gate, put some food on the trailer, and by the time we get down to the trailer, half of them are on already.
Wow. That's amazing
So
that
it's
they,
an easy loading process.
yeah.
That's one thing we learned when we moved from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin. Put
Yes.
the alleyway in.
To help with
The
moving.
alleyway is a lifesaver. Well, when I'm doing most of it myself.
Yeah.
So if it's just me most of the time, that makes a huge difference if I can just put a hog panel across and it can help me do my job.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then your alleyway is 16 feet wide, you mentioned, and then it opens up to different pastures, and each pasture is 3/4 of an acre. Is that what I'm hearing?
Roughly.
Give or
That's
take. Yep.
awesome. And then when the sows are together, I'm just kind of, I guess, reflecting on what you said. You give the sows a break for 1 month, 2 months, or do you have a preference?
It's usually about 2 months, depending on when they farrow. And again, that's, keeping in mind if we had a girl coming out of the maternity ward right now, so we're weaning tomorrow. So if I was taking a lady out and I said, okay, you look like you have been nursing piglets for a month to 6 weeks, you need a break, then she would just go into a different pen that doesn't have a boar and she would get a longer break now. So, I
Got
mean,
it.
it's always, you got to always use common
Yeah.
sense, right?
Kind of,
So if they
yeah.
don't think they need a break, then they need a break. We don't,
Yeah.
if there's nothing
Off the
set in
body.
stone.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah, make sure they don't look too depleted.
correct.
When piglets are born, do you do anything with them like iron or anything, or you just let pigs be pigs and okay, awesome. Yeah, that's what I mean,
So
we are hands off as much as possible other than castrating. Which that was
they're fun to play with. So it's
oh,
not
of
like we don't
course.
go in and see them, but
Of course. But I mean, like, you're not
yes,
giving them vaccines, you're not giving them
no,
iron shots, you're not giving them anything. Yes, we don't do
no,
that.
No,
no.
and so early on, you're always concerned. You're always like, oh my God, she's gonna farrow, and you're out there checking every hour, looking. And when she starts having it, and the piglets are trying to walk away, and you're trying to put it back to a teat. We've learned now that if you walk away, all those pigs are going to be fine anyways.
Yeah.
And we probably caused more damage
hovering.
trying to keep them there,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
disturbing the mother, making her move more. This way it just happens naturally, and you go out in the morning and there's piglets and you check on them and look at them and say, oh, that's great, you know,
Yeah.
and you move on.
Nature.
I mean,
runs
and
the world.
obviously you have a stillborn here and there, but it just happens.
Right.
And whether we were there or whether we weren't there, it was probably going to have a stillborn anyway.
Right.
I'm not saying that there aren't that some that, you know, maybe something happened that would have made a difference, but all things considered, I think we lose less and have less issues, like Dave said, stepping away and letting them do their thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
And-
agree.
And really they're not a commercial pig, so they're supposed to be able to do
Mhm.
what they need to do to survive.
Yeah. They don't need to be
And
put in
so,
farrowing cages or
yeah, so,
No.
so that's a trait we want to carry on.
yeah.
Well, the only example or exception to that might be a brand new gilt. Brand new
Okay.
gilts are a thing of their own because they don't know what they're doing, right?
Right.
They've never done it. They're confused. Everything is brand new.
It's
Then they deliver and
yummy.
yes, exactly. So we do pay a lot more attention if it's a brand new gilt, but I still do it from, you know, 30 yards away. I
Right.
will walk past and look on her many, many times, but I don't go in. I don't sit there. I don't micromanage what she's doing. But I do tend to, again, if it's a new gilt and I'm concerned, which I always am with a new gilt, I will walk past a lot more often than I would if it was a sow. Yep.
And a lot of those issues with farrowing come from the owner, not the pig.
Mm.
You know, an obese sow has a problem delivering. They have too big of piglets. They have fat in the birthing canal. We think they need a ton of straw, right? So you fill their house full of straw. Well, that causes a problem because the piglets then bury in the straw, and then she suffocates them because she doesn't know they're there, can't hear them. So there's that balance that we need to figure out.
Yeah.
And you know, typically those are the things that we see people doing, and they're like, "Oh, I lost my litter." Well, tell me why. Like, tell me all the things that
Yeah.
happened, and it's not the pig's fault. It's your fault typically.
Wow. Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Mhm.
Right. Just
I mean,
need
you could have that random pig that decides to go have her litter out in the middle of the field,
yeah.
you know, but that's very rare. And typically that would only happen if they were in one of the big pens with other
Right.
pigs.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get away.
Oh, they're just trying to get away. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do
Mhm.
you let sows farrow together in the same pen, or do you let them, or you usually separate
No.
them? Okay.
Oh, we don't, and we have to know who's who.
Right.
So the only way to know who's who is to
Separate.
keep them separate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we all the sows will have a 50 by 50. Again, it's maternity ward. That's what I call it. So
Yeah.
each sow has her own 50 by 50 section. That's where she has her own A-frame. She has her own water, her own wallow. Her piglets are in there with her. They do their thing. And then they move, you know, when she goes back out, she goes back out. And when we wean, the sows leave and the piglets stay where they're at. And we
Okay.
leave the piglets for a day or two because they're comfortable.
Yeah.
So we have had almost zero issues with piglets getting out, with sows carrying on and, you know, getting concerned and crying. When we realized that we needed to move the sow out and leave the piglets where they were comfortable.
Got it.
Because, so for example, the other day I wanted one of my sows to eat the runway between the maternity ward section. And I thought, instead of mowing this, which is what I normally do, I'm just going to let her out and she can wander around and do her thing and it'll be fine. And I opened the gate and truly hadn't shut the main gate, right? So I opened up her little part of the electric fence and I turned around and Ruby was almost to the gate. She was like, "Oh, it's weaning time. I'm out of here."
I'm done. I'm free.
Yeah. I was like, "Not today, not today. It's not time." So I'm
Yeah.
jumping through fences to get to the gate ahead of her.
Trying to get her
And-
before she goes.
Yep.
And on that weaning point, if you take the piglets from the sow
Uh-huh.
instead of the sow from the piglets
Mhm.
will be back with that sow in the morning.
Oh,
unless you have them completely contained somewhere that they cannot get out of. But
wow. They figure it
But
out. Want to go
yeah,
back.
but if we give them, so like we're weaning, and then we'll give them 2 days, and then we are going in and we're going to pick them all up. We're going to ear tag, castrate, and sort them, and then put them back into different pens based on, like here's our set of breeding girls, here's our set of breeding boys.
Oh,
And then you can, after 2 or 3 days, you can sort them and move them around and they're fine. But
okay.
if you do it the first day, they're going to get back to mom.
Okay. And what age do you usually do that at? How old are they?
Somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Okay.
I
So
can
that's
tell you
great.
tomorrow, our oldest group this weekend is almost 7 weeks, and they're huge.
Oh,
They're
wow.
not my favorite. I like 5 weeks.
and
Yeah.
and really, the longer you keep them on the sow, the more the sow gets depleted.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so you have to have that balance, trying to
Yeah.
keep her health as well as the piglets being ready.
Yeah.
And depending on the weather, right? If it's
Right.
really cold and the
Mhm.
piglets aren't coming out to eat on their own, they're going to stay with mom a little longer.
Right.
Um,
That makes a lot of sense. When you castrate yourselves, right?
We do.
yes.
Yeah, you don't hire out. Do you
No.
I mean, obviously there's different methods for castrating. I'm curious if you have a preferred method.
We've tried a lot.
So we have a video on YouTube, whatever, on castrating. But
Awesome.
really it's flip them on a straw bale upside down, flat on their back. Jodi holds the legs and I cut. And it's less than a 10-second process.
Yeah,
Very simple, very easy, and the pigs go right back into their pen and start eating.
that's
So
wow.
there's very little trauma.
That's great.
We've tried a lot of different things, mostly because people would tell us and we'd be like, oh, well, let's try that and let's see if
Yeah.
that works better. And every time we keep coming back to the straw bale because, well, probably we're good at it.
Yeah. And
You
that,
have a routine,
and that's how we were taught.
Yes.
right?
We were taught from an elderly farmer that castrated thousands and thousands of pigs, and he came over and showed me one day, and that's just how we've done it.
Wow. Do you
There are
when
definitely other methods that work. And I mean, there are some other people that have some phenomenal setups, like we're by ourselves and this is how we do it. But, and again, they all work. It's just that this is what works the best for us.
yeah. Do you check for hernias to determine if you do the pull method or do you just cut and not
Well,
just
We know if there's a hernia before, typically.
Right.
You can see it.
Yeah.
And once you look at enough pigs, you'll be able to see it instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So those don't get castrated. Those ones we just turn into roasters, and
Just
unfortunately,
sooner. So
they
you don't
just stay intact until
okay.
they're probably 8 to 9 weeks old, and then we kill them and make them into roasters.
It's like a Christmas
Okay.
pig or whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So if you see a hernia, you just don't even mess with it. You're like, we'll just eat it in a
Yep.
couple months
Yeah.
and call it done.
I
That's
mean, the
good
thing is,
advice.
well, you could have a vet come and do it, but then that's really expensive. And in
Yeah.
the scheme of things, you're selling it as a barrow anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd
No,
rather eat it and save the, $150 I was going to pay the vet. So,
right. That makes sense.
mhm,
Yeah. Because what's the point? You're just gonna, yeah, you could
yeah.
just
And we don't have very
process.
many of those. In the scheme of things, I think we probably have maybe 2 or 3 a year out of the,
Oh,
couple hundred pigs we have. So it's not very
wow.
common.
Yeah.
But yeah, it happens.
Okay. Do you have any good farm stories that you want to share with us?
Well, did you hear the story about why when he said it's usually or owner related that
Oh,
the
yeah.
pigs have problems? Did you hear how
I
I learned the
did.
hard way?
And then
Okay.
I saw you laugh. So he kind of chuckled, looked away, and then I saw you cracking up
Well,
as you're both
that's because
laughing.
we learned that the hard way. And by we, I mean me.
Yeah.
I was pregnant when we got our first pigs. And I'm like, I'm pregnant. I'm hungry. Like they have to be hungry. These sows are pregnant. They're carrying a lot of piglets. I just have one baby and I'm starving. And so I kept feeding them. And he's like, Jodi, you're feeding them too much. I'm like, no, they're hungry. They're hungry. I'm sure of it. Yeah, no. They got really fat. We had to pull from all but one sow that spring. It was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Wow.
I will never overfeed again.
And we never pull piglets. Like, we haven't done it since
No.
Wow.
forever ago.
It was ridiculous.
So
It was all me.
You could tell that she was struggling, and then you had to check.
Oh yeah.
Gained and
yeah. They were huge, just the hugest piglets. And then, you're fat. So she's got all these fat deposits in her birth canal. So you've got a gigantic piglet in a small space.
Yeah.
Oh, it was awful.
And I mean, that same thing happened when we moved to Wisconsin. And Jodi only had a couple animals here. I still had animals in Pennsylvania, and Jodi only had a couple, and she really likes to feed animals.
That's not why she had it.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, we culled that one because she had a small birth canal.
Well, we couldn't even get in there to pay
Oh,
piglets.
no.
Oh, really?
No,
Oh,
it was
man.
tiny. We made my sister-in-law, who didn't do anything with animals, come and use her teeny tiny little hand to reach in there and grab piglets.
We need your small hand.
And she's like, wait a second. This is not what I was picturing when you said you were moving to Wisconsin.
She's like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We did call her though, because it was too small. I mean, if you're not big enough to carry and deliver without an issue, nothing is going to change, the composition of her pelvis. So yeah, we ended up calling her.
And especially as a breeder,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that, being able to farrow on your own is a quality that you want to carry on. And so you
correct.
Continue to breed her when she needs help. So that makes
and it's determining if it's the pig's fault or your fault.
Yeah. That too.
95% it's the owner's fault.
Oh man. Well, I am really curious because I know that you had a list of things that you wanted to add to share. If you had anything on your paper that
so I was going to add to this for you. So you have one of your questions was, what do we have for weather challenges? And winter, right? Winter and a short growing season in northern Wisconsin is definitely, in our world, the biggest challenge. But the fodder unit, I can't tell you how much I love our fodder unit, because then I know all winter our pigs are still getting greens every single day from 3 months up.
So tell me about the fodder unit. This is new for me. I think I've heard of it for chickens. Like people grow fodder in baskets or something.
Yeah. Same thing, but it's a gigantic system, and it's set up so that truly all of our pigs from 3 months on, that's what they get for supper.
Really?
So, and we do it all year round, because then it keeps everything the same. But like I said, in the winter, I know that I'm pulling greens, which is barley and some field peas, and they're getting greens in their diet, even in the middle of winter when it's, 5 feet of snow outside, so that our meat quality stays the same. And I could butcher pigs in January and feel confident that my meat quality is the same as if I was butchering in July.
That's such a great point, to carry on the greens and nutrients through the winter for those pigs that are growing out during that time. What does the unit look like, or what does it entail? How much space do you need, or where is it set up at? I'm like all these questions now.
So it's basically a racking unit with trays on it, and we spread the seeds on the trays, and then it waters via water, so it just runs through. So just think of a shelving unit with trays on it that is growing grass.
But it takes up my whole garage, so I don't have a garage. I just have a fodder unit.
I was wondering, how many days is the growing cycle, and then how much does each pig get?
So the
growing cycle's typically 5 to 7 days.
That's why
Depending on the season, and the conditions in the garage, like the humidity
Okay.
levels, stuff like that, the temperature.
So I like 6 days, but there are probably 2 or 3 weeks in the spring and 2 or 3 weeks in the fall where it's not hot enough outside to open all the doors and shut off the heat, but it's too hot to not build up humidity inside.
Got it.
So for those couple weeks, we run at 5 days because if you kept it longer, you start to build up mold. But
Oh,
most of the time, it's 6 days we run on.
And 5 to 6 days is the most nutrients you're ever going to get out of that plant.
got it.
So it's the optimum. You're talking 20 some percent protein, completely palatable. Feed, the feed number on that's going to be about 250.
Wow.
So feed value is the amount of value they're going to get out of, say, hay. A really good bale of hay is going to be about 170. So that'd be really good dairy quality alfalfa. A normal
Wow.
bale of hay is going to be about 70 to 90.
Wow.
So that just tells you that the
Almost
quality of
double.
the feed they're getting.
Wow, that's really impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I'm like, wow, that's when you're comparing it to, because we have dairy cows. So I'm in awe right now. I don't know if my husband will give up his garage for it. I got to work on that. No.
It was my anniversary present one year.
That's amazing.
That's how low maintenance I am.
Oh my gosh. No, but I mean, it may be the thing with farming, right? Your love is in the animals. Your love is in taking care of those animals. And it brings you joy to know that they're being taken care of well and that they're loved. And so it makes sense that that would be an amazing gift for you because that's where your heart is, right?
I do like to feed things. It's
You
not wrong.
like to feed them well. I love it.
I do.
Oh my gosh. You
Yeah.
how much do you feed them? Like I'm like trying to
So,
and does it cut back on
so
their grain
when you
or-
talk about fodder, they talk about 2% of their body weight per day
Okay.
is about what you're shooting for.
Interesting.
Obviously, we don't weigh it. We just kind of,
Aw.
say that's 7 inches for this pig and that's 10 inches for that pig. And
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't cut back on their grain. It's just added to the grain.
So we don't feed grain in the evenings anymore. We just feed the fodder.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I shouldn't say that. From 3 months up, they get
Okay.
fodder in the evening and no grain unless they're nursing.
Got it.
The entire maternity ward gets grain twice a day because again, they need those extra nutrients or the minerals because again, they're nursing.
Yeah.
So if we, cut back and only gave them fodder, they'd be losing a lot of minerals that they need.
Got
And
it.
again, anyone from up until 3 months, they get grain twice a day.
So if someone typically is doing 2 pounds of grain in the morning, 2 pounds of grain in the evening, would you then be just doing 3 or 4 pounds in the morning, or would it just still be 2 pounds in the morning and then fodder in the? And is it cheaper?
That's what we do.
And is fodder cheaper than buying grain?
it is, cost per pound for sure.
Right.
It used to be a lot better until our grain prices went skyrocketing.
Oh, I know.
Now it's not quite as different, but
And we don't live in farming land, so everything for us is just ridiculous. It seems
We
like.
live in the forest as well, so
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. The joy of these pigs is they're not just good in one place, right? They're down in Florida, they're in Texas, they're in Washington, they're in Maine, they're
Alaska.
in Alaska, right?
Oh
Like
my
they're
gosh.
all Hawaii. There's pigs, Idaho Pasture Pigs in Hawaii. So you can put them in all of these different weather, areas, climates, and they do really well. Yes, it has to vary a little bit, but in the scheme of things, they do really, really well.
Yeah.
And again, if like for example, you said if we vaccinate and we don't give iron shots, but our ground is very rich in iron. So we know that if they are nosing through the ground, then they get the iron that they're needing. again, there's flexibility, right? If someone wants to do something on their farm and we want to do something on our farm, that's fine. It works. So
Yeah.
that's what I always tell people. There's no wrong answer. There's
Right.
just a right answer for your farm.
I love that.
And yes, they're just so versatile and so expressive and so fun.
Yeah.
I love them. Yes, immensely. And I didn't want pigs.
Well, and that leads me to my other question of why? Why, like, out of all the things you could do, why pigs? Like, why did you guys go down this journey?
Oh, this is on him. I didn't want pigs.
Because I wanted pigs.
Yeah.
And I wanted two pigs, a breeding pair.
Yeah.
And then, and we started with coonies. Had those, and that's how we met Shelly, was through the Cooney world. We knew she was developing this breed. And then I said, yeah, that sounds like the perfect pig. And guess what? It was.
Well,
Wow.
again, they grow fast enough that you get an actual carcass when you're butchering. Where
Yeah.
a Cooney, again, they're lovely pigs. They're just very slow at growing. And at the end, for our family, I mean, there was not a lot of pork
Yeah.
to feed 3 growing teenage boys.
A lot of lard.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so Jodi, thinking she didn't want pigs, and then getting pigs, and then she's like, when are more coming? So she completely
Oh,
fell in love, and now she's the pig lady.
I know.
They're easy to fall in love with, though. Like I said, they all have personalities. They all are, again, you just know the differences in the pigs themselves, right? So if I go out there and I'm playing with Paige, if people come to visit, I'm like, yeah, we can walk in and sit down with Paige and her piglets because she could care less.
I
Now
love
we
that.
could go in and see Tilly's piglets, but Tilly, if one of them squawks or, even if they're wrestling around each other, she's more likely to come over and check on them, which is good. But at the same point, I know the difference in the pigs. I just,
Yeah.
yeah, they're awesome. I love them.
It sounds similar. My husband and I, well, so he always said no to pigs. My husband did. And then when we got the milk cow, I was like, honey, we have extra raw milk and we don't give a ton of extra milk to the cow or to the pigs, but they do get raw milk as a treat, and they love it. They think it's like the best thing in the world when it's warm and fresh and
Yeah.
they go crazy. But I think for him, his experience was they had animals growing up and they were the fast growing, I forget the breed that he had, but they didn't have personalities. And he just remembers them always escaping, always squealing, like they weren't friendly. They were just like commercial meat pigs. And to see, he loves these pigs. He is out there giving scratches. He's out there hosing them down. He is out there, with a beer in his hand and a hose in the other, or, helping me move fences and giving scratches. I mean, it's just really cool. I feel like it brings the family, even the kids, like everyone's involved, right? You're not inside watching TV or I mean, there's been times where I'm like, wow, it'd be really nice to sit on the couch right now. But think of how much longer we'll live because we're outside, we're moving our bodies, we're with the animals, we're in fresh air, we're living, we're not just sitting and being, whatever, right? Like I don't know. It just feels so amazing to be out with animals, and it just gives a greater purpose. And I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and the stigmatism with pigs are they stink and they're dirty, and yeah, pen them up where they can't be clean,
Yeah.
and they won't be clean, and they will stink. Anytime you concentrate manure, it's going to stink,
Right.
And don't allow it to dry. So we have as many pigs as we do, and you never smell pig manure on our farm.
That's amazing.
Ever.
Do you and I'm going, yes, when you were talking, because that is the stigmatism and the stereotype. And it's not the case. I mean, they go to the bathroom in one corner. They're not cows. They just poo and pee everywhere, wherever they feel. Same with chickens.
Yep.
chickens are the dirtiest now,
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my
No, turkey.
Oh, or
Turkeys.
turkeys, yes,
Sure.
turkeys too. But I mean, but pigs have the worst reputation. But to me, I'm like,
Hmm.
they just go to the bathroom in one corner, and then like
Yes.
you said, you just clean it out or move their fence, right? We just try to we're just always moving things, so it's not just this poop corner constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm sure you have some that smell like maple syrup.
Yes.
Yes.
I say
Thus
that to people. I'm like, they smell like maple syrup. They're like, I don't know. You're dreaming of sausage on your pancakes. I'm like,
so
no, they smell like maple syrup.
thus the maple line.
Yes.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Yes. So Maple, when she was getting ready to farrow, I would walk in there and I'm like, why do I keep smelling maple syrup? And I kept every time I'd walk in there. So she became Maple. A distinct maple syrup smell.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Because we named ours Mango, and then we were smelling it. We're like, why didn't we name her Maple? That was dumb. So I call her Mama Mango because she's due to have a litter on Saturday, and that's our little, you do your little dance, you talk to animals,
Yep.
like, hi, Mama, how you doing today? But yeah, I'm like,
Oh.
gosh, I should have named her Maple because she just smells so good.
Isn't that crazy? And she's supposed to smell like a pig, right?
Yes. I'm like, people need to know this. Oh man. Um,
Awesome.
yeah. Well, I feel like that was the majority of my questions. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
have anything else to add or
I don't. We pretty much covered everything that
yeah,
I
yeah.
had little notes about. Yeah.
Yay. Well, this was great. I appreciate you guys and your knowledge and your experience and your kindness and willing to spend some time on Zoom with me to, help educate. I know you're big on education because you've written a book and you're always sharing in the group. And that actually, I want to share a compliment about the Facebook group because everyone feels very kind. Like you go online and I'm sure there's been whatever there's stuff anywhere you go, right? But for the most part, people can ask a question in there and not feel stupid. And I do a lot of searching where I'll just like search my question in the search bar and then I'll see all the posts. But I feel like for the most part, there's not people tearing you down. And sometimes in some spaces, you feel like, well, should I ask? I'm worried to ask, or I'm going to feel stupid, or they're going to make me sound stupid. Or so thank you for being such a great resource for the Idaho Pasture Pig community and wearing your heart on your sleeve and always being, so kind to answer.
Oh. Well, the thing is, education is helpful to everyone. It really is, because I want everyone to enjoy the pigs if this is the pig they want to have, right? Like there's a pig for everyone. So some people, Idaho pasture pigs aren't the pig for them. But if they are, then I want people to be able to succeed because they're awesome.
Yeah.
They're just awesome. Mm-hmm.
And
But thank you for the very kind words. And I'm glad that you said that about the Facebook group, because we do try very hard to make it educational and fun where everyone can ask questions. And again, if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. And the
right.
only way to learn is to ask.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
In this side note, you're the minority. Most people don't use that search button.
Oh, I try
But
to
I
go.
wish they did.
I'm always like, because there's so many. You type in like a couple words, and then there's I don't know a gazillion posts on it, and then there's
Yeah.
just read the. I don't know. I do that most of the
Well,
time.
and again, like that's it. There's just so many different ways to do
Yeah.
certain things
Yeah.
that you don't just get one person's viewpoint, right? Like we have a viewpoint, but that doesn't mean there's not many other viewpoints that won't work, right? Like
Yeah.
they work.
Yeah.
So that's the joy, is being able to search and then be like, oh, well, this works for me. This works for me. Okay, that doesn't work for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Or
all,
they live by me, and their weather's like me, or
yeah,
that's also.
yep.
And the
Sorry.
preface is, this is how we do it, and this is why we do it that way.
Yeah.
And then you can say, oh, that doesn't work for me, or that does work for me, and that's why it works for me, or that's why it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. No, I
Yep.
think that's great.
Well, and that's the other reason we tried to get go ahead. I was going to say.
Oh no, I was just
No, I was going to say that
you go.
out, I think I lost a little bit there. No, I was saying that that's kind of one of the reasons for the advisory board that we tried to get regions around the United States, because again, climate is different around the US. So if you have someone in your area that is dealing specifically that you can reach out to, it just makes it easier for people. So yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
Well,
and we don't have the answers for the desert areas and stuff like that, where that region person does or has a better understanding of it.
right. That makes sense. And encouraging
Yeah.
people to raise their own meat.
Yes.
That was my biggest thing. I'm
Absolutely.
like, gosh, if you've got some land, it doesn't take very much. Even if you're just doing it for yourself and you buy yourself a feeder or two, it's just supporting small farms and I don't know, keeping it small, right?
And you can do it anywhere. I mean, we're in a county of 9,000 people,
Yeah. Wow.
and it's a big county. So
Ah,
it doesn't matter where you're at.
right. Yep. I
Mhm.
agree. Well, gosh, this was amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And
It
I
was
get
a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank
it
you.
was fun. When I get it all, put together, I might cut some, like if I say and too many times. But I'll have to share it with you when you're all done. If you want to send me your logo, that would be great. And then I can put your logo
Okay.
on the video. So,
I can do that.
well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You. Bye.
Bye.